The stream. And now I'm going to stream. So just want to welcome you and thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today to give us, I'm sure, which will be a wonderful class on Nusringa Dev's appearance. So I'm going to go start the streaming and you can start the class.
Hold on. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so shall I
Yes.
continue or
Yes,
begin?
you can begin. Yeah, it'll just be a few seconds before it starts to stream.
Okay, well, good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone, wherever you may be. And it's nice to be with everyone on this auspicious occasion. This is one of my favorite days, as I'm sure it is for many of you. But some may question and some have questioned in the past as to the place of Nrsimha Dev in the lives of those who are involved in the Brahmavir of Rupa Goswami, which is the case for all of us in our Sampradaya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give the opportunity to enter into Leela Seva in Braj, and the worship of Nrisimha Dev is typically Vaidhi Bhakti rather than Rag Marg, and it leads to reverential love of God in Vaikuntha. So why are we celebrating this day today, or why are we preoccupied with it? Why is it one of our favorite days? These questions have been raised by some in the past, and along with that, then what is the place of Vaidhi Bhakti in relation to Rag Bhakti? And even some criticisms have been leveled at our particular party bar for our preoccupation to whatever extent, to some extent, with Nusringa Dev. And so I thought I'd address that. It's notable that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is said to have imparted the Nusringa Mantra to his son and disciple Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So again, it's not the typical mantra given by the Gaudiya Sampradaya. And of course, that's not the only mantras that he received also from Bhakti, from Gaur Kishordas Babji Maharaj. But nonetheless, the question may arise, and it has. So I would like to address that, and in doing so, I want to bring everyone's attention first to Rupa Goswami's book Padyavali, which is a collection of verses on his part by known and unknown Vaishnava authors, verses that he liked and verses that he put under different headings. And relative to the discussion, I will read you one of those verses to begin answering the questions posed at the onset here. This is Yashodarani speaking to Krishna. Oh, my rising dark moon child, you're not asleep? Krishna, no, sleep has not come to me yet. Yashoda, listen, my son, I will tell you a bedtime story that will make you fall asleep. Krishna, what is this story? I have never heard. Please tell it. Mother Yasoda then proceeded to tell the story. And when she came to the sentence, then Nrisimha appeared from the pillar, eager to rip the demons to shreds. A smile suddenly arose on the child's lips. Shri Padyabaliki Jai Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. So this is a bedtime story told by Yasoda to Krishna, and of course, Bhagavan Nrisimha is also the household deity of Nanda Maharaj. So this is a story about the household deity, and in the context of the Prakat Leela, the manifest Leela, Krishna hasn't heard the story before, or so it would seem. Of course, we will smile because we know from our lower perspective, tattva perspective, you could say, which is important, of course, that Krishna and Nrsimha are one. So perhaps Krishna is smiling for that reason, but I think more from the Bhava perspective, he's smiling to hear the cleverness of his deity, the household deity, in appearing as he did, in that form, which corresponds with the attempts that Hiranyakasipu made, set up to overcome the inevitability of time and death, or the hand of God. As you know, he performed austerities, and Brahma was forced to respond to his austerities and penances and grant his wish, and his wish was that he wouldn't die. And Brahma didn't have the power to grant that, but Hiranyakasipu went on to ask that he wouldn't die, or wouldn't be killed by a man or an animal in the land, or on this air, or in the sea, and in the day or the night, and so forth. And the cleverness, of course, of Bhagavan is that he appeared at dusk, neither day or night. He killed Hiranyakasipu on his lap, which is not in the air, not on the land, not in the sea, in the form of a man lion, not an animal, nor human, so on and so forth. So you can imagine how Child Krishna was amused by the cleverness of Nusringa, and the cleverness of himself, if you will, in that form, and the all-pervasiveness of himself, in that he appeared out of a stone pillar. Thus, Bhagavan is everywhere for those who have the eyes to see, such as Prahlad. And we can just imagine how from the Bhava point of view, also Child Krishna felt safe and secure and protected, and certainly fell asleep peacefully on this evening. Of course, Mother Yasoda would tell a story in a brief way to Child Krishna, but as he grows up and becomes a cowherd in his Poganda Lila, and then surrounded with his friends, in the evening, he will hear the story again, and this time from the lotus mouth of Nanda Baba, Nandaraj. During the evening, Chayana Lila, and in Braj, excuse me a minute, technical issue, the lighting, there we go. After the arati to Nrsimha Bhagavan, performed by Madhu Mangal, who is like an adopted son of the family, at a certain point in the Leela, he joins and becomes a resident in Krishna's house and becomes the pujari for Nrsimha Dev. And so he performs the artik, and after the artik, and before the evening entertainment, it's a socially relaxed atmosphere. Yasoda is taking her meal, the young gopis are cleaning up and so forth, and Nanda Maharaj is relaxed and surrounded by Krishna, Balaram, and their friends, and he wants to hear from them as to the day's happenings with their cow herding and so forth. And upon request from them, they want to hear from him a story. They want to kind of plumb the depths of the deep wisdom and insight of the king of the cowherds, who, after all, is kind of the ideal, in one sense, for all of them who are going to, as it would be thought, grow up and become a cowherd like Nanda Maharaj, so wise, so generous, so dharmic. I mean, he's the absolute ideal cowherd gentleman, after all. And again, he's the king of the cowherds. It was, although he's not the eldest son of Nanda Maharaj, who would have been the king, Upananda is the eldest. When Upananda was given the crown by Nanda Maharaj, he, as his first act, passed the crown to Nanda Maharaj, one of the five brothers in the middle, two younger, two older, and all the brothers were very happy with that arrangement. So again, so dharmic, charismatic, kind, generous was Nanda Maharaj. Of course, there's no envy. Everyone celebrated the event. So these cowherd boys, they in this sense, they idealize him. I mean, he's the perfect example, and he's, as I described him, very wise. So he's very much acquainted with all the Puranic stories and histories, and so to sit around after the arti, after the meal, relaxed, and to gather at the feet of Nanda Maharaj. Perhaps a boy jumps up and sits on his lap, which he accommodates, allows him to pull on his salt and pepper beard curiously, and beg Nanda Maharaj to tell a story. So certainly, again, later in his life, in greater detail, with some more philosophical import, Krishna hears the story from Nanda Maharaj. We should aspire like this: that we could hear the story of Nrsimha Bhagavan in Braj at the feet of Nanda Baba. Shri Nanda Maharaj ki jai. We can't imagine how he can tell the story, how thrilling it would be, how heartening and encouraging to, from a religious point of view, to all the cowherds, that if they live according to their dharma, certainly God will protect them, as he did Prahlad, the perfect and ideal devotee. So as we see, as we're going forward, we'll continue with there's some place for Nrsimha Bhagavan in the Braj Leela. He is the deity at the house of Nanda Maharaj. He's the protector therein. And while Krishna is hearing the story from Nanda Maharaj, and I say we should desire to hear this. We've heard the story many times, of course. Every year I'm giving a lecture on this for 40 or 50 years now, practically. And the Bhagavatam deals with it in great detail. There was as an aside, I remember that the successor, Balabhatirtha Maharaj, successor of Bhaktivedanta Madhava Maharaj, had a book compiled of his talks on Prahlad Nrsimha Leela, and on the back of the book, it was mentioned that anyone, something to the effect that anyone who says, I've already heard this story, hasn't heard this story. I mean, the measure of it, the implications of it, philosophically, theologically, and how it pertains to a sadhaka in the early developing stages, which is the case for most devotees, it's so pertinent. And so, yes, we want to hear it in perfection, if you will, even what to speak in practice. In perfection, Krishna and his friends are hearing it from Nanda Maharaj. Krishna's hearing it in his childhood from Yashoda Mai, and it never loses its edge, if you will. It never becomes as if I've already heard this. No, let me hear it again. And so, as we aspire, if you will, to hear it from the mouth of Nanda Maharaj, similarly, we're taken from Krishna Lila to Gaur Lila, which is a Lila in which siddhas are playing a Lila of sadhakas, so instructive to us. There, Madhu Mangal appears as Srivas Thakur, Nanda Maharaj is there, Yashoda Mai is there, and so forth. And the story, of course, is told. If we go from the evening Leela, the Shine Leela in Krishna Leela to Gaur Leela, we find Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, along with Gadadhar, to the delight of Sachi, exhibiting very strong religious sensibilities. Sandhya Kale Nija Babane Gamana Atiya Paruparita Deva Vandanari Koraye Jatane Jahate Mayer Prita. We sing this song every day. One verse from it. It speaks about this time in Gaur Leela. Deva Vandanadi. And so it speaks of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu engaging in worship of the household deity, along with, of course, he does along with Gadadhar Pandit, and how he does it with great care and attention. And that is, notice of that is taken by, as I mentioned, Sachi, and her heart swells, as the verse says, to see how my son is taking to the religious life and setting such a good example, along with his closest associate, Gadadhar Pandit. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will make the offering to the deity, and Gadadhar Pandit will do the artik, and Sarup Damodar will do the kirtan. So compelling to think that Krishna, in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is doing this Vaidhi Bhakti. The teaching Rag Bhakti. He's engaged in Vaidhi Bhakti, Archan. And the deity, of course, the deity in the household of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi is Bhagavan Narayan, particularly Nusringa. That honor to host Bhagavan Nusringa as the household deity goes to Srivas Thakur, who, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is the Madhu Mangal of Gaur Leela. He's identified with Narada everywhere. This is mentioned. And of course, Narada is identified with Madhu Mangal as Krishna expands himself to participate in different leelas, corresponding with the hearts, the love, the prema of different devotees. That original Swayam Bhagavan has original associates who expand along with him to accompany him in different leelas. So Narad is the Vaidhi Bhakti expansion, if you will, of Ragmarg, farcical character Brahman of Brajalila, Shri Madhu Mangal Ji Ki Jai, Shri Narada Muni Ki Jai, Srivas Thakur Ki Jai. So in the house of Srivas, which is very, very central to Gaur Leela and to our possibility of accessing Gaur Leela. That is the house where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began his nocturnal school of kirtan, if you will, his Rasa Sen Kirtan. to which eventually, from which eventually he came out of those behind those closed doors of that confidential kirtan to share that opportunity with others. The whole Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is about how to conduct oneself following an example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, such that you can enter into the house of Srivas Thakur and participate in that kirtan. And there the deity of Bhagavan Nusringa resides, worshipped as he is in Vaidhi Bhakti by Srivas Thakur. You have to understand that this Rag Bhakti of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a very special dispensation. The idea of worshiping Radha and Krishna is not something that he brought to the world, but he brought it to the world in such a way that it becomes accessible through a systematic approach, a sampradaya, such that it had not been to date. So yes, Madhavendra Puri, the seed of that Braj love is found in him. He initiated Advaita. Ishwar Puri initiated Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Advaita initiated Sachi and so on and so forth. But they're all more or less engaged in Vaidhi Bhakti. Of course, Advaita knew Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. He knew because of who he is. He is the Anga, I should say, the Anga of Swayam Bhagavan. Therefore, he, while typically calling, while typically I should say the Yuga Avatar comes through the Mahavishnu, he is Mahavishnu, he called on Krishna to take the place of the Yuga Avatar. So he knows Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, but that has yet to come out in the lives of all of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates. So we find Srivas Thakur, he's engaged in Vaidhi Bhakti to Nrsimhadev. He's a very good devotee. Of course, they're doing Nam Kirtan. Nam Kirtan is the way of Kali Yuga, but it's thought as described in the Upanishads as the way to deliverance, which would mean to attain mukti, and the inner additional or prospect brought to us in Kali Yuga by the fact that Chaitanya Krishna himself has come as the Yuga Avatar, is that by chanting Nam Shreshtam, the name with the highest conception of the name that was entertained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that was which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was absorbed in, then Prem Prayojan, right? Beyond Mukti, beyond Vaikuntha. Again, Rag Marg. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming to give this in a systematic way, and devotees like Srivas Thakur. In the context of the Leela, although he's a Siddha, he's again in the role of a sadhak, he's to learn about this from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But before we go to that any further, back to the house of Sachi, there Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is hearing the Bhagavat also. He's very religious, performing the artik or Seva Puja. Gadadhar is there and so forth. But Gadadhar is also the main speaker of the Bhagavatam in the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So every day there will be a Bhagavat discourse by Gadadhar Pandit, and it's mentioned by Vrindavan Das Thakur and Chaitanya Bhagavat, that hundreds and hundreds of times, over and over again, Gadadhar Pandit would recite the Prahlad Charita, Nrsimha Leela, Prahlad Nrsimha Leela, in his Bhagavad discourse, to the delight, of the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his other associates. So we want to hear this story from Nanda Maharaj. We want to hear this story from Gadadhar Pandit. Take it to another level, from the Radha, if you will, of Gaur Leela. And again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never tired to hear the story. it's after all, it covers a large portion of the Bhagavatam itself. There is no Avatar Tattva is one of the subjects, of course, of the Bhagavatam, one of the Ashrita Tattva, one of the sheltered subjects, of which there are 9, the 10th being the shelter giving ashray subject, that is Krishna himself. So Avatar Tattva is one of the themes out of 10 of the Bhagavatam, all of which 9 of the 10 are sheltered under Krishna. So the avatars are, the implication is aspects of Krishna, but this avatar, Nusringa Bhagavan, no avatar mentioned in the Bhagavatam gets as much attention as Bhagavan Nusringa. In fact, in the 7th canto, there are 10 chapters describing this Leela from beginning to end in one sense. And in the 3rd chapter, there's a discussion of as well, the backstory of it, if you will, with the Kumaras going to Vaikuntha, cursing the gatekeepers, and of course they're taking birth, and one of those births is of one of the gatekeepers is as in the form of Hiranyakasipu, which is the father of Prahlad, and so forth, and so this is the backstory to the appearance of Bhagavan Nrsimha. So much attention to this story is given in the Bhagavatam, and the prime mover, if you will, to bring Prahlad into the picture. Secondary movers are of course, is Hiranyakasipu and his adharmic behavior and so forth. But the primary mover is Prahlad and his love, and repeatedly throughout the text, throughout the chapters, Prahlad is described as a devotee of Krishna. He's a devotee of Krishna. Of course, he's a devotee of Krishna in Vaidhi Bhakti. But Krishna appeared to him as Nusringadev in a form that Krishna is smiling about in his childhood as he hears from Mother Yasoda, just appropriate to deal with the situation and protect Prahlad. If we want to understand the Bhagavatam also, we would do well, and Bhagavatam is the very heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is the Amala Pramanam, the spotless evidence. It's the Amala Purana, the spotless Purana, because it deals only with transcendence rather than addressing those conditioned primarily by Rajas, Tamas, or Sattva Guna. There are other Puranas for that. This book is for the Paramhamsas. What does the text say? The second verse: Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Nirmatsaranam satam. It's for these people. It deals only with transcendence and in the fullest measure, taking us to the Braj Leela. It was the very heart, Bhagavatam, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the principal commentators in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, who are the principal commentators on the Bhagavatam within all the sampradayas. Rupa Goswami, he didn't write a commentary on the Bhagavatam, but his books are an extension of what is found in the Bhagavatam. But Sanatana Prabhu's commentaries, Jiva Goswami's commentaries, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary is there. These are the main commentaries on the Bhagavatam. And my point is here, they all defer to whom? To the ancient commentary from their time period perspective of Sridhar Swami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had much regard for Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Bhagavatam, because if we study the Bhagavatam commentary of Sridhar Swami, we understand that there is Swarup Shakti. There is something called Swarup Shakti. Bhagavan has Swarup Shakti, which means his form is eternal, which his Leela is eternal. Bhakti is eternal. This is beyond mukti. So all of our principal commentators in our Sampradaya, they refer to Sridhar Swami as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, showing deference to him. And of course, the story of Nusringa's, of Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Bhagavatam is relevant to our discussion today. How is that? There's a verse, first of all, I should say there's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that's similar to a verse that is central to Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Bhagavatam. That verse goes, Aham veti, sukho veti, vyaso veti na veti va, bhaktya bhagavatam grayam nabudaya chatikaya. Nabudaya na chatikaya. This verse says that that it's thought to be spoken by Shiva. Aham vedmi. I know the Bhagavatam. Sukho veti, and Sukadev knows. Vyaso veti na veti va. Vyasa may know, he may not know. But Bhaktya Bhagavatam Grahayam Nabudaya Nachatikaya. One thing's for sure, you can't understand the Bhagavatam simply by the force of your intelligence or simply by studying the tikas even. But Bhaktya Bhagavatam Grayam. Bhaktya here means Navalakshan Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti of Prahlad. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam Atmanivedam. Iti Pumsapito Vishnu Bhaktischa Navalaksham. Kriyeti Bhagavati Adha, Tanmanye Ditam Uttama. When Hiranyakasipu asked his son, what's the best thing you've learned in school? This is what Prahlad said. The best thing I've learned is this Navalakshan Bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and so forth, Padasevanam to Vishnu. Of course, this didn't go over very well with Bhagavan, with technical difficulty, with Hiranyakasipu, and this gave rise to his then mishandling, abuse of his son, and so forth, and the appearance of Nusringa Dev. But here, the word in this verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita is a Sanskrit verse. The word bhakti here means Nabalakshan Bhakti, by doing bhakti. And you can study the book with your intelligence, and you should. And you should study the tikas, but that's not enough. You have to study the tikas, and you have to worship the book with your intelligence, with a view, as I often say, to use your head to soften your heart, to learn something from the book that you can put into practice. The book reading is meant to inspire us to apply ourselves in seva, hearing, chanting, practical seva, as much or more than the opportunity presents itself. There's a famous story told by Sridhar Maharaj of a scholar who came to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and asked him to explain to him the essence of the Bhagavatam. And Saraswati Thakur, without being facetious, said, "For that, you talk to the gardener." So it was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I don't know his name, but he was apparently a gardener, and Bhaktisiddhanta concluded that he had understood the Bhagavatam, and of course, obviously, he wasn't a scholar. So it's not that we shouldn't study the Bhagavatam. We should, and especially study the commentaries. And he studied the commentaries under someone who can explain them further and so forth. And all this with a view to apply ourselves in service. So only by Navalakshan Bhakti, by hearing, chanting, remembering, archan, deity worship, and so forth, can we understand the Bhagavatam. And this verse I cited because it's similar to the verse relevant to Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Bhagavatam. It's said that he wrote this commentary, and there's a historical record in which we find that Sridhar Swami was at one time, and it must have been at this time, the leading, the Mahant, if you will, in the Shankar Sampradaya of the Jagannath Puri Math. The Jagannath Puri Math is one of four maths or monasteries established by Shankar. And the one in Puri, the religious sector of that Advaita Vedanta sect, you have the renunciates like Sridhar Swami, and then you have the religious sector, the Smarta Brahmins. They actually do the puja at the Jagannath temple. And at one point historically, Sridhar Swami is in the legend, they're just in the records as the Mahant of the Math. But he wrote a commentary on the Bhagavatam, and it didn't square with Advaita Vedanta. There are some Advaitic sides to it, which Jiva Goswami says in his Tattva Sandarbha were like the bait that Sridhar Swami put out to attract Advaitins. And there's quite a history of Advaitins from the Puri Math where Bhakti is prominent. Of course, they don't have the Shuddha Bhakti, Uttam Bhakti understanding of Rupa Goswami, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the sattvic idea of Bhakti. But nonetheless, from that sector, there's quite a number of sannyasins who left the Shankar Advaita Vedanta Marg and came to Bhakti. And we find this in the Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Practically all of the, or a good number, I say, of the principal sannyasis in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lineage who were older than him and became his associates in the Leela. They were previously associated with Shankar Sampradaya, his own sannyas guru. Keshava Bharati was in the Bharati sector of the Advaita Sampradaya. So Sridhar Swami came out of that, and he wrote a kind of a budding bhakti commentary, trying to take others in that direction, using their kind of Advaitic language and sensibilities and so forth, the art of preaching, if you will. But the Advaitins questioned it, and the book, the commentary, was then taken and placed before the deity of Shiva, and a verse came out, it said, somehow. And it's similar to the verse I cited. Aham veti, sukho veti, vyaso veti, na veti va. Sridhara sakalam veti, something Nusringa Prasadata.
Shri Nusringa Prasad.
So there's the last line. So it says, Shiva say, I know the meaning of the Bhagavatam. Sukadev knows, Vyas may know, he may not know. One thing's for sure, Sridhar Swami knows the meaning of the Bhagavatam by the grace of Nusringa. Nusringa Bhagavan ki jai, Sridhar Swami ki jai, Grantaraha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So if we want to know Srimad Bhagavatam, I was blessed to have had the darshan of the Nusringa deity that was said to be worshipped by Sri Jiva Goswami, Jiva Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. That deity is in Jaipur. And so you can understand, when I had the darshan of that deity, I bowed before him and made a prayer. What was my prayer? That Bhagavan Nusringa Devi, please bless me that I might understand Srimad Bhagavatam by your grace. This is, again, the book that is the very heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Nusringa Bhagavan, he plays an important role in that book. In the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, after the slaying of Hiranyakasipu and decorating himself with the intestines, which represent anarthas, that he destroys. Hiranyakasipu kind of being the personification of material attachment and so forth. He destroys that. After doing that, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision, Bhagavan Nrsimha came to wash and bathe in the Ganga at the most, arguably the most beautiful places in the flow of the Ganga. There's two places that would come to mind. The Gangotri. I have been blessed to have been to Gangotri, to where the glacier, that melting glacier, drips into a little and very, very cold pond, cold pool, really, that is the source in this world of the Ganga. There it's coming somehow on Shiva's head, right? And flowing down. That's a very beautiful place. And that, in that area is where, of course, in Himalaya, where somewhere up in there, perhaps closer to the Saraswati, but in the same region, that Vyas penned the Bhagavatam from the traditional point of view. But the other places where it reaches its destination, and in the Bay of Bengal, and enters into the ocean. So beautiful. Nrisimhadev chose to go there, that place, and that is Nadia. That is Navadvip. Navadvipa. He went there and he went to the Dvipa, the island of Godrum. Godrum is non-different from Nandagram, the house of Nanda Maharaj. Of course he would go there. He's worshipped in that house in Braj, and Navadvip is non-different than Vrindavan. He went there. He bathed himself, and that place, Godrum, is also identified with the Anga in Vaidhi Bhakti of Kirtan. All of the different islands, 9 islands, 9 Angas of Bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smanam, and so forth. Regarding his vision, Bhaktivinoda Thakur composed some beautiful 4, 5, 6 prayers in glorification of Bhagavan Nrsimhadev appearing in Godrum. Bhaktivinoda's house was in Godrum. He resided there. It was from there that he saw, had the vision of the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Mayapur, which is very close to Shivasangam, where the deity of Nrsimhadev, again, as I mentioned earlier, would be established by Shivas Thakur and worshipped therein. But here the point is that this Navalakshan Bhakti is represented by the 9 islands of Navadvip. And on that, in those islands, in that Navadvip, Nrsimhadev is active. His landing of Godrum is indicative of the fact that that his, among the Angas, his favorite Anga is Kirtan. And of course, that is the primary Anga of Bhakti for Kali Yuga. He's not particularly a Kali Yuga deity, but he likes Kirtan, so he has some affinity for the Kali Yuga as well. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's form of Kirtan is most sublime, with just the addition of the Kol and the Kartal, and we learn from Gaur Leela that not only is Kirtan the favorite Anga of Navalakshan Bhakti, favorite of Nrsimhadev, but he has a favorite instrument also. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came out of Shivasangam and his closed internal kirtan and made it available to the public, Mayamrigam Daita Sinaman Vanhavad. Bhagavatam says he came out from there. And why? For what reason? Why would he come out? This is the compassion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As a devotee, he will have compassion for for the world, and he gave bhakti to us. He came out for us. And coming out, he began his kirtan, to perform his kirtan in the streets. While previously there was a closed circle, there was internal associates, and in the context of kirtan and Shiva Sangam, he revealed to them their sarups, his associates in Krishna Leela and so forth. But he brought the kirtan out in the streets, and hundreds of thousands of people joined his kirtan. But this was under the Mughal rule, and the Mughals complained, but even the Hindus complained. What kind of religion is this? This singing and all through the night and so forth. And particularly the house of Srivas, which was hosting the kirtans of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was an object of concern and even attack and vilification on the part of Hindus. So Srivas Thakur was in a very difficult situation. And the Qazi, in charge of the area, politically speaking, sent his men to crush the mridanga and stop the kirtan and so forth. Of course, when they went and they crushed the mridanga, then flames came back at them, and they reported this to the Qazi. He knew what to make of it. He took rest that night, and in the night, he was awakened twice. The second time by 100,000 plus Sankirtaniers, torchlight at his doorstep, led by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he came to the door for discussion, how he had been awakened earlier in the night was revealed. When he told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that a man like half man, half lion form appeared in a dream and told me that that mridanga that's my favorite instrument. And he left the marks of the lion-like claws on my chest, and he opened his kurta, and there he showed it. And all the devotees, they just were astounded and energized. I mean, they were already energized by the fact that Nimai Pandit had become a Vaishnava. Nimai Pandit has taken his madness of love of Krishna and brought it to the streets. And this new religion is so wonderful. It transcends caste. Anyone can birth, and so anyone from any sector of society, from any gender, can fully participate. It's the ritual that supersedes all of the rituals. All rituals everything is complete just by kirtan. The Varnashram is so complicated comparatively. This is so simple, so beautiful, so sublime, and so forth. They were encouraged by this, and now they knew that Nusringa Bhagavan had the back of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well. If they had any doubt, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Come with me, don't doubt. We'll go to the Qazi's house." They may have been trembling, some of them, to think we're going to go to his house. But there they saw that Nusringa Bhagavan had the back of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Indeed, as he told the Qazi, this kirtan is my favorite anga of bhakti, and this mridanga is my favorite instrument. So just to be part of that kirtan, you can just imagine how they were encouraged to proceed with the dharma of Kali Yuga, how they felt there could be no obstacles, no other philosophies that could get in the way. They didn't understand the depth of the philosophical underpinnings of the kirtan, but they were so immersed in kirtan with such faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arising from his example and so forth, that you can imagine, had the feeling nothing can check us. Nothing can check this. And I guess we need to close the lecture here. And let us do that by returning to the house of Srivas Thakur, to his courtyard where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's kirtan was hosted. And there we find what? We began our discussion with the fact that Krishna worships Nrisimha in the Leela, in the Braj Leela. He's the household deity. And of course, the two, from the point of view of Tattva, are one. And hearing about himself and his cleverness in his childhood, Krishna smiling as he hears the story from Yashoda Mai. And he feels secure in his bhava. Nusringa will protect us. So just as Krishna worships Nrisimha, so similarly Nusringa worships Krishna, just as Gaur worships Nusringa. Nusringa Bhagavan worships Gaur, and Gaur is non-different from Krishna. After discovering, as I mentioned earlier, from Godrum and through research, empirical research as well, from his vision at Godrum in his house, and from empirical research of maps and the history and geography of Navadvip, Bhaktivinoda Thakur determined the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he established a temple there. It's right next to Srivas Angam. And after some time, Bhaktivinoda noticed in the morning that there was like a whirlwind, like a mini tornado that seemed to come down the street repeatedly and just kind of at the time of Mangal Arti and then dissipate right at the Yoga Pit. So he found this curious and he meditated on it for some time, and then he came to the realization that that is Nusringadev in an apricot form, attending the worship at the Yoga Pit that was established by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So here is Bhagavan Nusringa worshiping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And at Srivas Angam, also just practically next door, Gaur revealed himself to be one in Tattva with Narahari to Srivas Thakur, who during his, the latter, Srivas Thakur's puja to Nusringadev, during his puja, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to South. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to, at that time, he would wander throughout Nadia, giving joy to everyone just to see him, bathe in the Ganga and so on and so forth. And he just came on that day to Srivas Thakur's house. Srivas was inside the puja room, the door locked, and he was really doing Vaidhi Bhakti, Archan. And Archan taking him into meditation. He wasn't doing it and thinking about something else, but he was fully absorbed in that meditation on his deity, Nrisimha. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to his house and began to pound on the door and broke his meditation. He said, "Open the door, open the door." Well, Srivas didn't know what to do. He didn't entirely even know what to make of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for that matter. This is very early in the Leela. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, had manifested himself as a devotee, had begun his kirtan and so forth. But his devotees, like Srivas, would get flashes that maybe this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. How could that be? As I said before, they would think, well, if he was Krishna, then his associates would be here as well. So I guess he's not. Of course, they realized he is Krishna, and we are those associates in another Leela. Imagine how staggering that was for them, how exciting that was for them to find their way, their place. And of course, they would go back and forth to realize it and to move away from that realization, to participate fully in the Leela, in which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is is Nimai Pandit, Vishwambar, and along with them, they're worshiping Krishna, and principally through Nam, and of course worshiping all the forms of Krishna as well, like Nrsimha Dev. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to the door. He wanted to convince Srivas Thakur once and for all. What you have thought, perhaps, that's true. I am the deity that you're worshiping. We're one and the same. So he pounded on the door. Srivas's meditation broke. He opened the door, and there was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He manifested 4 arms and roared like a lion, just like the deity that Srivas Thakur was worshiping. And like Nrsimha told Prahlad when he appeared before Prahlad, he said, ask for a benediction, ask for a benediction. Srivas Thakur, as I said at this time, was under some duress. His house was the center of discontent for the surrounding community of Hindus who weren't participating in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan, and Muslims. The Chandkazi was upset, and even some persons were vilifying Srivas Thakur and so forth. So he was under some duress, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to put him at ease and show him the deity that you worship and myself, they're one and the same. Madhu Mangal, when he worships, this is Srivas Thakur and Krishna Li, when he worships Nusringa Dev, he's not going to have as much attention. His attention is more on Krishna. But Srivas Thakur has had his full attention on Nusringa, and he thought he shouldn't give as much attention to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu now showed himself to be non different than his deity, this was a huge point in the life, the sadhaka life as a lila of Srivas Thakur. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that I know that the Kazi is upset with you, people are criticizing you and so forth. You should know that your house is protected by me. Bring your family here, bring your wife, bring your children, bring your cat, bring your dog, bring them all, and I will bless your whole family. And you have nothing to worry about. You go to the Kazi yourself and ask him. He said, go to the Kazi and ask him, can you bring animals before you and make them cry? If you can't do that, then you don't have the power of our Vishwambar. That's what he said. And then he said, bring Srivas, bring your niece, Narayani, 4-year-old girl. No education, anything. He said, chant and weep. And she wept, and a pool of water surrounded her, and she chanted Krishnanam, chant Krishnanam and weep. And tears just poured from her eyes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I will make the animals weep, and you tell the Chandakazi, what is my power? This is his power, that he could make people weep, make their hearts melt. Our hearts are contracted because of material attachment, personified in its fullest sense in Hiranyakasipu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's not different than Nrsimha himself, obviously, he can melt those hearts. It's possible by his practice. And although this is the work in one sense of Nrsimha, the protector of the devotees and the destroyer of anarthas and so forth, imagine how he admires Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's approach to this in Kali Yuga. Nrsimha did it in a very ferocious way, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doing it by the sublime activity of Nam Sankirtan. So beautiful, so charming, so easy to perform. He asked Srivas Thakur, chant, praise me, say prayers and praise of me. And Srivas Thakur, who is again the Madhu Mangal of Krishna Lila in Gaur Lila, and he began to sing the prayers of Brahma in the Brahma Vimohan Lila, the first prayer of Brahma, which speaks about the beauty of Krishna in his cowherd form and so forth. A very appropriate verse for Madhu Mangal to be singing, and in effect identifying not only Nusringa with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Krishna, and Nusringa Bhagavan with Krishna as well. So Vaidhi Bhakti, what is its role in Raga Bhakti? Don't think it has no role. Of the three things that Rupa Goswami mentions, one, this is Raga Bhakti, according to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. If you have the interest in this, some taste for this through association, even a little bit, through being embraced by our Ragmarg Sampradaya, then hear the Leelas of Krishna in Braj, especially those pertinent to Sakya or Madhurya Rasa, the main influences or currents of bhava in our Sampradaya. Two, do service with your sadhaka deha, and as it arises out of that service, do service in your siddha deha, meditative body in Krishna Lila. If you want to meditate on through a meditative siddha lila, you have to fully absorb. If you want to meditate in a siddha rupa, you have to fully absorb your sadhaka rupa, your senses in the service of Bhagavan. And three, what is the third thing? Do Vaidhi Bhakti. Do Shravanam, Kirtanam, Archanam, Vandanam, so forth. Of course, do it with a view to attain the prem of Braj, and find, in regard to our talk, find Nusringa Dev there and hear the story of Nusringa Dev there from the mouth of Maharaj Nanda. Maharaj Nanda ki jai, Bhagavan Shri Nusringa Dev ki jai, Bhakta Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Bol. Some thoughts, any questions today?
I think there's a question in the chat from Ananta Govinda. Do you see
Okay.
that? What is the proper way for us to worship the deity of Nrisimha? We see in
With all these thoughts in my mind.
that what?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We see in classic worship they install Lakshmi Nusringa. We often see Prahlad Nusringa, how to best serve in worship.
How what?
How to best serve in worship. So how?
Well, I think that the worship is there. There are certain procedures in worship in Archan that should be observed, and those can be found in the different texts and so forth. And some devotees have specialized in that, but more importantly is the mood behind it. So that's what I've tried to speak on today. What is the conception, the conceptual orientation we have towards the worship of Nusringa Dev? So we can worship him, and he will want to benedict you. What benediction will you ask for? That you could hear his story from Nanda Maharaj, that you could hear his discussion of the Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit, that you could hear Srivas Thakur tell a story that I just told, and so these kinds of ideas. So it's more of what's more important is the conception. I mean, and I would be inclined in the context of worship of Nusringa to worship Prahlad Nusringa. These are because Prahlad is so important to us. So I hope that helps. Any other question?
Does anybody else have a question? You could unmute and ask a question.
Did this talk answer your question? You wrote me a question. I just glanced at it. It had something to do with. Did this talk answer your question?
Oh, absolutely, Guru Maharaj. I was astounded. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good
Thank you.
endorsement.
You had some dust, was it, or something? What was it?
From Nandagram. Yeah, came
From
from a
Nandagram.
devotee.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you wanted to put it on the altar with Nusringa or something?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I've been wanting to, and then
Appropriate, yeah.
I thought today would be a good day. Yeah.
I
So you
see.
totally
Oh, I
answered
see.
the question, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day.
Thank you.
What else? Any other thoughts? No. Well, that must be my 50th lecture or something once a year. I don't know how, on this subject. So we hope to see you again, all of you, and more next year to continue this discussion. At times we've had festivals where we did a 2 or 3 day festival on this topic and discussed it from different angles. So again, it's a very rich Puranic story that's the real important parts of it are brought out in the Bhagavatam. So try to take advantage of this day. Read something of Nrsimha Leela. Bhagavan Shri Nrsimhadev ki jai. Bhakta Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Swami Guru Maharaj ki jai.
Jai. And next year, we'll have one of those 3-day classes where we're all together. Let's meditate on that. That'd be wonderful.
Okay, hope so.
And everybody
Haribol.
stay on just 1 second for a special announcement. Okay, tonight, because we were all probably just hankering to hear more, that was such an incredible class. Tonight, Padmanabha Swami will be giving a talk on the same channel at 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So everybody is invited to join us, and I'm sure it'll be a wonderful follow-up class to today's class. So Jai. Beautiful devotees. Have a wonderful
Ki jai.
Jai. Haribol.
Oh, he's somewhere cold.
Yeah, somewhere cold.
I thought he was in Madhavan, but no, that's not.
Haribol.